Hello, beautiful beings. It's Maria here. I'm popping on today because Spirit has kind of guided me to share my story in the sense of my story about my spiritual awakening, my dark nights of the soul, and really just share my journey with anyone and everyone that wants to listen. The Earth plane is going through a massive evolutionary shift. We have been for some time. There are many people waking up to this reality, waking up to the light inside of them, and also waking up to a lot of the darkness. So I do feel that it's important that I share my journey with people. It may resonate, it may not. It could be for people that are just starting to wake up, and it could also be for people that have been awake way longer than I have. Because I have found in my journey that the people that I really gravitate to and listen to are those that are willing to also share their story and the experiences and challenges that they've gone through in their own awakenings and their healing process. They've really inspired and empowered me to now do the same. So, this is why I'm here today. I'm not going to say that this is going to be a short video because I have a feeling it's not going to be a short video. I will try to sort of, what's the word? Sum up as best as I can the last 4 years of my life, and even previous to that. But um, I'm not going to try to like cut corners with this because I do believe that every aspect of my journey has been crucial in my awakening process. And I do think that it does help others by sharing it. So I'll kind of start with just a little brief background. I've been a nurse for 13 years. I was an LPN, then an RN. Prior to that, I was a CNA. So I've been in the healthcare realm for some time. In that time frame, I was also diagnosed with many autoimmune disorders, starting at the age of 28, and I'm now 37. So I was a provider of the system and also a very heavy consumer of the healthcare system. So put that aside. Um, in my spiritual life, I was raised Catholic. So spirituality, I will say I was definitely introduced to spirituality by my mom, because even though I was raised Catholic and in a religion, my mom always had this spiritual essence about her. She didn't necessarily follow and or believe in everything that the Catholic Church taught, but it is kind of part of the programming of our society to, if you're raised Catholic, then we raise our kids Catholic, right? So that's how I was raised. Not like a hardcore Bible hugger type family, but certainly church every Sunday and CCD made all of the sacraments, or I think that's what they call them. I don't remember now. Totally never resonated with me. Let me put it that way. I remember being a kid and going to church and having this very like just off feeling being there. I felt like what they were teaching us was very well, I'm like having a hard time coming up with words this morning. Um, but I felt like it was very hypocritical. Thank you. Thank you. Couldn't think of it. I just felt like there was always all these rules, and yet they preached about this unconditional, ever loving God, but yet the church itself, the establishment, had all these crazy rules. And I remember like being pretty aware of that at a young age because I remember even like questioning it a little bit. Not always out to my parents, but more to myself. Like, this doesn't make sense. But like a good kid, I did what I was supposed to do. I went to church on Sunday. I was quiet in church, sat there and took it all in. And then again, did all of the sacraments. And once I got to high school, when I was a sophomore, my parents split up. And from then on, we stopped going to church. So, not to say that, the split up was a great thing at the time. It was a hard thing to go through, but it was meant to happen. My parents are much happier versions of themselves apart. And we as a family are just better off with the split. But at the time, it was very challenging for me. But I will say one of the good things that came out of it was like we didn't go to church anymore. So I was no longer forced to go to church. My mom continued on her spiritual path and found different congregations, different, not always Catholic, was really kind of just trying to find something outside of that Catholic realm as well. She was much more in it for that unconditional love. So I'm so grateful. She knows how grateful I am, but I feel it warrants mentioning again that I'm very grateful to her because even though I was raised Catholic, she was always more open-minded than the Catholic religion. And she always instilled that in my daily life, right? We said grace before dinner. But it's like now I recognize it being so much more, there's so much more intention if I were to say grace or like bless my food now. And even that I don't do as much as I feel I should. It's kind of just like I think a habit you start to get into. And I think because I was raised saying grace and it was so sort of like robotic, I remember like it was God is great, God is good, let us thank you for our food, amen. Right. So it was like very like non-intentional. It was sort of like you were saying the words, but I don't really think I understood the meaning of what I was doing. I was actually having higher states of consciousness bless my food, and I was also thanking the universe for this food that was to fill my vessel, right? But I didn't understand that at the time. I get it now. And I almost feel like because I did it so robotically before, I like almost forget to do it now. But as I'm talking about it, it's probably something I will start to become a little bit more intentional about because I do think it's so important to express our gratitude to Mother Earth, to the universe for the things, the nourishment that she gives us, right? So, raised Catholic, stopped going in high school, went through my parents' separation and eventually divorce in high school, became a very, very angry, angry teenager. Got into a very abusive relationship at about 18, 19 years old, stayed in that till about 21, 22-ish. Um, and that was rough. But I also, looking back now, I know I've said it in other videos, I used that relationship as a tool. It was all part of my path, right? It was all part of even things that my higher self kind of pushed me into because it was all about the lessons I was supposed to learn from these experiences. So early 20s, I get out of that really tough relationship. I jump right into another relationship with my now husband who is 15 years older than me. So a very, very different relationship than what I came from. And here we are now, married, right? So in those years that my husband and I were together, we started ghost hunting. So I've always had this knowing, even though church didn't resonate with me, and even when I stopped going to church, I still felt a connection to something grander than me, grander than this, right? I've always believed in spirit. As a kid, I was highly sensitive to spirit, and I know I started shutting that off at one point. Um, and I had been to different mediums over the years. I think the first time actually was for my 17th birthday. My mom had a tarot card reader come to the house, and she was spot on with stuff. She was so spot on with what I was going through in my life at the time. And she planted like a seed that day. I remember that I had the capability of tapping in like she did. But I was 17 years old, right? And I was very angry at that point in my life. So, not something that I was looking to really dive into just yet. Um, so now I start dating my husband. We're together for quite a while before we end up getting married. But in those years, like I said, we started doing ghost hunting. He actually got me into it because he used to watch all the paranormal shows. And then we started to like, we're like, all right, let's go try it. And so our very first experience, I was highly affected. And I won't go through every ghost hunting experience we did, but they were pretty wild. And it validated to me that I did have a gift. but it also freaked me out because I didn't understand it still. So we'd go do these ghost hunting expeditions all over the place, right? Some were actual tours and investigations that we signed up for, and some of them were just he and I going and investigating places that we knew were haunted, bringing our equipment, and we caught a lot of EVPs, which are electronic voice phenomenons, on our recorder. And like I said, I was highly affected every single time we did ghost hunting. And when I say highly affected, I mean physically, I would get feelings I didn't realize until I started doing this work, what was happening to me, but I was inviting a lot of energies in. Um, and because I was still, even though there was a push and a drive to do it, there was also fear when I was doing it. Like, I mean, you're in the pitch dark, you're in places that are kind of creepy. Sometimes we would split up, we'd be alone. So it could be very scary. And for somebody that literally has like lived their life in fear and very aware of it, like I know I was afraid of cat like my whole life. It just was weird to me that I wanted to do this. And even though it freaked me out, I'd still want to do it. And it was almost like I'd want to do it even more. The more it freaked me out, the more I was like pulled to do it. So I do feel that those years of doing the ghost hunting were crucial in my awakening process because I was open to spirit, right? I was open to the fact that there is way more than meets the eye on this physical earth plane. But I wasn't vested in the whole religious perspective of it. I was starting to learn it from a much more what I believe to be spiritual perspective. So we did the ghost hunting. We caught all sorts of evidence on camera, on recorder, personal experiences. And then in 2018, we lost our dog, Snoop. Snoop was my dog from the time I was 19 years old. I got him as a little puppy. And he was my guy, right? He was my dog and he died when he was 13 years old in 2018, like I mentioned, from a very, very aggressive cancer. Um, Gratefully, thankfully, he did not suffer long. When I say the cancer was aggressive, it came out of like nowhere, but I understand it didn't come out of nowhere. Um, but it came out of nowhere and it took him pretty quickly. We ended up putting him down in August, actually August 17th of 2018. And when that happened, I went through a very intensive grief process because, again, that dog had been part of so much in my life. He was part of the abusive relationship I was in prior to meeting my husband. And then he was part of our relationship, but he just went through so much with me and helped me through so much, right? He was my grounding agent, which is why he ended up getting cancer, which I've mentioned in several other of my videos of starting to really understand energy and how we're affecting our animals and everyone around us. But our animals are just sponges. So that was a contract that he and I had. And I know that. That's why I can talk about it without falling apart or having all this guilt because I don't have guilt about it. I understand what the lesson was and I'm grateful to him, right? And so now I know better. So I do better with my other dogs. Um, so I digress a little bit, but Snoop's passing was pretty rough on me. As many people that have dogs can I'm sure resonate with and understand. Um, and about 3 days, I think it was after his passing, because I was in a pretty like depressed state for a couple days following his passing. Like didn't want to get out of bed, kind of depressed state. But I knew it was going to pass. I was, allowing myself to grieve. And after being in bed for about 3 days, I remember my husband saying he had to go out and pick something up and asked if I wanted to go for the drive. And at first I was like, yeah, no, I'm just going to stay here and be miserable. So he walked out the front door and then immediately something pushed me to go. So I got up really fast, ran down the stairs and ran out. I was like, all right, I'm going to come. a few hours prior to that, I had posted the Rainbow Bridge poem, which many of you are probably familiar with. It's got to do with, when you lose an animal, they wait for you at the Rainbow Bridge. And I just posted it on my Instagram, I think. And in the post, a tribute to Snoop, and was like calling on his energy, talking to his spirit, because that's the other thing. I used to talk to Snoop all the time, not just telepathically, but like vocally when he was physically here. And so I was doing it when he had passed. And it felt very normal to me and natural to do that. I've always talked to things and animals my whole life. Didn't really understand why I was doing it, but I totally get it now. But I've always talked out loud to things, places, people, animals, inanimate objects, you name it. I've talked to it because I get it. It's all energy. Um, so not so crazy, I guess. um, so I was really like talking to his spirit right after he passed, and was just like, asking him to give me a sign, give me a sign, give me a sign, what we all do, right? Like, just give me a sign you're okay. I just need to know you're okay, even though I know he's okay. But the human ego me needed a sign, needed validation. So I was like begging him for 3 days. Well, how the heck am I getting a sign if I'm laying in bed, right? I mean, I can, but a little bit easier when you're sort of out and about. So I do feel that's why I was pushed to go out that day with my husband. And we're driving, and I'm looking up at the clouds. And now in my head, I'm like, come on, Snoop, like, just give me a cloud that looks like you, something, like, give me something, right? And nothing. And I'm getting like sad and kind of angry, like, why can't I get a sign? Like, and the moment I surrendered to like just accepting, like, all right, I'm not going to get one. I'll get one when I'm supposed to, right? The moment I did that, I stopped looking at I'm stopped, because I was literally like looking out the windows like this, like, give me something, give me a bird, like something. And nothing was happening. So I was like, all right. So I just start looking forward as I'm sitting in the passenger seat. And the minute I like surrendered and it was like, all right, it's going to happen when it's supposed to, it did. A rainbow formed. Like, it was like forming as I was watching it form. And I immediately, at that moment in time, I knew. And I started to like fall apart, but it wasn't really, I mean, part of it was grief, but it was gratitude, and like it was peace, because I was like, that's all I wanted, was to know that you're okay. Like, I need to know you're okay, and like we're okay, because at that point I did have some guilt, just in his passing and how it happens. There was guilt because that's what we do as humans. We carry guilt and we carry shame. And then when things happen, those energies are magnified even more. So it brought me like this overwhelming sense of peace. And I also realized it was another step in my awakening, because I was starting to really tap in to that knowing, and trusting, even though it was hard. And from that point forward, again, that was August of 2018. And in that time frame, my husband had retired. We were making plans to move out here to Arizona. We were trying to find a house. Like, we were sort of in the beginning phases of all of that, the planning to get out here and all that. So I was waking up, but I still wasn't obviously where I am now. And this is why I think I'm sharing this too, because the awakening process is just that. It's a process. And when we think people are awake, like it's sort of like that awake is another label I'm finding that is creating more separation with people that are awake and asleep, awake and asleep. Like, that's again the illusion of separation on the earth plane. So it's really, I think, important for all of us to understand that awakening takes linear time. It's a process. It's continuing. So I don't really even consider myself to be awake. I consider myself to be an awakening being. Because to me, it's like another synonym for evolving, right? I'm not evolved. If I was evolved to the highest state of evolution, I would not be here anymore. So I am evolving, I am healing, I am shifting, I am awakening still. I am much more awake than I was in 2018. And if I make a video 15 years from now, I'll probably be saying the same thing. I'm much more awake now than I was in 2022 because it's a process. And it's a very humbling process, very humbling process. Because when we think we're awake and we have it figured out, nah, higher self's like, all right, next level, please. Next new understanding, understanding coming your way since you think you're so awake, right? So, so 2018 into 2019, I was working, I believe, yeah, I was working from home at that point, doing auditing and insurance type claims, as a nurse. I had already stepped out of the system, as far as being hands-on because my body couldn't do it anymore. So this goes back to one of the biggest parts of my spiritual awakening, which is my body breaking. My body essentially telling me it's time to wake the F up, because I had created and manifested so much disease in my body. So by 2018, I was no longer working hands-on in the field anymore. I was doing per diem stuff, hospice, but even that I could do only minimally because my physical symptoms really were causing a problem. I couldn't, if you can't zipper up your own pants, how the hell can you roll a patient that's 300 pounds? So, I had to recognize where my limitations were because it wouldn't be safe for me to be a nurse, taking care of people if I physically am having as much pain as I was at the time. So, I had stepped out of being hands-on at that point, listened to my body, worked from home, which was great, um, but also gave me a lot of extra free time, right? When you work from home, because you're cutting out a commute, you're cutting out having to get up extra early to get ready. Because I'm not gonna lie, I didn't shower every day before work. Not when you're working from home, you don't have to, right? That comes later. So, I mean, I had a lot of extra free time when I started working from home, which can be great and it can be a curse sometimes. At that point, I was not doing what I refer to as shadow work. So I think that time spent at home, um, really got me to go inside without me consciously going inside, right? Like I was really having to start to feel and become aware of things a little bit more. And when I say things, I mean like my own thoughts, my own emotions. Those things were starting to like come up a little bit more. I was starting to become a little bit more aware because I was less distracted, not going into work, not being around all these other energies in a work setting, right? Um, so 2019 rolls around the corner, early 2019, and we decide to book a trip for our family to go to Punta Cana in June to celebrate my stepson's high school graduation and also my niece's graduation that year. So my husband and I we booked tickets, and it was going to be my mom, my husband, his sister, her daughter, a friend of her daughter's, and my stepson. It was going to be all of us, right, going on this trip. And my husband and I have a vacation club that we bought back in like 2015, and we've used it up until COVID. Um, but we were going to use that vacation club to take everybody because my stepson had never been to an island, so it was like this big thing, right? Like we're super excited to do it for the family. Well, at the time my husband booked the tickets, he had like sort of this unnerving feeling about maybe we should book two flights because there's so many family members going. Like, what if something happened? Like, then we're all going to die on one flight, right? So he had that sort of thought come up as he was booking the flight. But at that point, he was like, no, no, I'm just gonna book it. Like, I'm not gonna like be in fear about it, right? So I think he shared that with me at the time. I can't remember if it was after he booked or not, but I think we both kind of were just like, well, it's booked, so it'll be okay. So now, that was like, we booked that in like January. We booked it early in the year. Um, and we booked it for June. So now a couple months go by, and at this point we have another dog, Bandit, because we ended up adopting him like literally like a month after losing Snoop, which I didn't think was going to happen, because I personally, after I lost Snoop, I didn't think I'd be ready to welcome another dog in just yet. I knew I would get another dog because I've always had them, and they just bring me so much joy. And now, even on a deeper level, like it's not even just that. Like there's such a connection with my dogs, and even not my dogs, like the dogs I work with at the shelter. Like there's such a deep connection with all of them, and such learning that I get from them, that it's more than just that they bring me joy now. Like I have a whole new appreciation for dogs. Um, so we have Bandit. We got him, like I said, we got him September of 2018. So he definitely helped, ground me as well after losing Snoop. And I knew Snoop was part of delivering Bandit to us, because Bandit literally is the perfect dog. Like, I kid you not. It's not just because he's my dog. He came to us that way. Like, I don't take credit that he's the perfect dog. He just is. Um, as he's sitting right here on the floor with me. I love him. So anywho, so now we're in 2018. I'm sorry, we're in 2019 now, early 2019, just going through life, going through our own stuff unconsciously, I would say, for the most part. And then all of a sudden, things started happening in Punta Cana, like on the news. And now I personally haven't watched the news in probably 10 plus years. I'm going to be honest. I've not been a news person pretty much my whole life. Since I was a kid, kind of told by my mom, like, don't watch the news because, like, I could see all the negative in it. I could feel it, and it would literally make me sick. And then I would be like, become almost like hypochondriac about everything I'd hear on the news. I would think it was going to happen to me. So my mom kind of nipped that in the bud when I was a kid. Like, yeah, you probably shouldn't watch the news. And she was right. So I, for the most part, was not a news person at all. Because it literally made me ill. I'm not gonna lie. And even more so now. But now I understand why it made me feel the way it made me feel, because it's fake. But that's okay. We'll get to that later. um, so uh help me out, spirit. This is what happens when I'm not in my thinking mind. Shit, I lose my train of thought. 2019, not watching the news, but I was driving somewhere. And I think at this point I had a different, yeah, I did. I had a different job. Um, and I was still working from home, but every now and then I'd have to go into the office every once in a while. And so I remember I was listening to like the radio, right? And even that, when commercials or news comes on, I usually change the channel. But for whatever reason, I didn't. And they were talking about like these things happening in Punta Cana, like these like mysterious deaths. And I'm like, oh no, 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 no. I've gone to third world countries plenty of times. We go on trips all the time. We stay on the resort. Like, I'm not letting fear get in the way of like this big celebration that we want to have as a family and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, nope, not, no, no, no. So for like a couple months, things were popping up about Punta Cana. And they weren't all related, but of course, it was all bad stuff that was happening there. And usually, the most news I get is from Facebook, because on my feed, I don't even watch the news on Facebook. I can't. But when I say I get news from Facebook, it's from the people that are on my Facebook, my news feed, people that are still watching the news and then sharing it on Facebook. So that's usually how I keep, up to date on the news. So there were people on my Facebook feed also posting different like weird stories about Punta Cana, like people going like just like, but they weren't all the same thing, right? It wasn't all the same tragedy, but I'm starting to see like the pattern, like, okay, like I've never seen this much negative shit before going to a place on vacation, right? Like, and like I said, my husband and I have gone to all the places that they tell you not to go to, because we don't let fear like stop us, even before really waking up to this level. Like, we weren't going to let fear dictate not going on vacation. We're just going to be smart about where we go when we go, right? And he and I are smart about that kind of stuff. Like, we're not going to go um, into places that feel seedy or sketchy and get drunk, right? Like, we're just, that's no. Even before being as awake as we are now, that's just not what we would have done. So we've always had really great experiences on our trips and even in the places they tell you not to go. So I was like, I'm seeing all these signs coming up, red flags about maybe we're not supposed to go on this trip. But I'm like, no, I never let this stuff stop me before. Like, why now? Like, and even more so, we're supposed to go on this trip because it's in celebration of my stepson and of my niece. And like, everybody's going to get to go and they've never been before, right? So this was really like a mind fuck for me for a couple months before the trip. And then now, flash forward to June, right? I think we are supposed to go in like the middle of the month. And now all of a sudden, like the red flags are getting louder. And now I'm starting to get almost like a sick feeling about it. And I was like, oh, fuck. Like, now it's the month of the trip, and I'm going to turn around and tell people like we're not supposed to go when I have no proof that we're not supposed to go other than my gut that's telling me we're not supposed to go. So I sat with it for a little bit. And then I want to say it was like a week and a half before we were supposed to go, where I remember I was sitting out on the front porch in at our house in Massachusetts. And my husband was on the phone with somebody talking about something totally unrelated, but whatever was said sparked something about Punta Cana again to me. And I was sitting out there and I got the sick feeling again. It might have just been that he was saying we were going away in like a week or something, probably something like that. And all of a sudden I get that sick feeling. And now I'm out there and I'm like, all right, I need a sign. And I'm literally going like this. I'm like, somebody give me a sign. Snoop, somebody give me a sign. And I remember walking into the house and I'm walking, like I'm now pacing around the house inside. He's still outside on the phone. I'm pacing and I'm like, I need a sign that we're not supposed to go on this trip. Like, I don't want to be negative Nancy. I don't really have proof that we're not supposed to go other than these weird things that have been happening, but that shit happens all the time in these countries, right? So I'm just like, I don't know what to do. And I remember like just sitting down on the couch and taking a deep breath and I go, I need a sign. And I hear, just like how when I do readings now or when I'm connecting, how I hear it, very, very like faint, but very like uh not forcefully, because it's not force. My higher self doesn't have a forceful energy at all. That's my ego. Ego's all about force and control. The higher self is much more gentle. But it was just very hmm, I can't think of the word I'm looking for. I couldn't deny it. Let's just put it that way. It was calm, but it was like, yo, you are the sign. That's what I heard. You are the sign. And I was like, shit. Okay. So first I remember going upstairs because at the time my mom lived in the in-law apartment next to us. And I went upstairs and I told her, and she was immediately like, okay, like we're not supposed to go. Like immediately was like, if that's how you're feeling, then I trust you. And so that was like, whew, thank you. Not don't feel so crazy anymore. But then I had to go tell my husband, and I was like, I do not know how he's going to take this. And like, it's his kid that we're supposed to be taking on this trip. Like, so I felt guilty too. There was definitely guilt that was coming up there. I was like, fuck it, I gotta say something because like I feel ill. Like I can't like if they all want to go on this trip, I'm not telling people what to do. But I'm at the point where like I can't go on this trip. And at that point, my mom was like, well, I'm not going. So I go outside. He was off the phone, and I was like, I have to talk to you like about this trip. And he's like, what's up? And I'm like, ah, I don't know. And then I started like babbling, but I'm like, we can't go. Like I think I just started like rambling about everything, like the red flags that were coming up. And like I was trying to like, tell him, I was trying to ignore them. And like, I thought it was just fear and blah, blah, blah. But they're getting louder the closer the trip comes. It's like it's getting louder. And so he's just like looking at me. And instead of being like you're crazy or what I've maybe what I'm projecting, what I would have expected him to think, he was like, so you don't want to go on the trip or you don't think anybody's supposed to go on the trip? I'm like, well, I don't want to go on it anymore, but I personally don't think anybody's supposed to. However, I'm not here to tell anybody what to do. Like, I'm just getting this strong, intuitive urge. Like, we're not supposed to go. Like, something is like, it's not going to be in our highest and best if we go on this trip. I didn't even know what highest and best really was at the time, but that's essentially what I was saying without saying that phrase. Um, and he was like, all right. And I'm like, what? And he's like, well, to be honest, like when I booked the plane tickets, I had a shitty feeling kind of. And he's like, I think I even said something to you. And I was like, oh yeah. And he's like, yeah, so like this is just validating it for me. And I'm like, all right. So we broke the news to everybody else. We ended up doing just and it was very nice, a little trip to the Cape with the family. So the kids could still, have like a celebration and everything. So, I mean, that's what we ended up doing. I bring all this up because that was really the push for me. At that point, I remember the next day after that, I started Googling psychic development classes. Where can I take where can I like, that's what I started Googling. And the first thing that popped up was like, you know, um, if you're looking this up, you're supposed to be here type of thing. So I was like, all right. So Spirit delivered me my very first teacher in my Google search. Debbie, freaking love ya. Love ya. I'm getting chills. I'm getting chills, Debbie, as I'm talking about you. So I started taking classes in June. I think I signed up for class like the next week because it was like all of a sudden, all the mediums that I had been to over the years, like all those seeds they had planted about me being able to do this were all coming to the surface. And it was like, all right, it's time to do this. So I started taking classes at the Zen Loft in Bridgewater with Debbie. And from then on, my life has never been the same. That was really part of my biggest awakening because when I started taking these classes, I was learning energy in a completely different way than I've ever understood it, ever been taught, which then I was able to start connecting dots because don't forget, at this point in my life, too, I was very sick still. My body was very, very sick. I was in chronic pain every single day. My joints were swollen. I had physical, visible ailments on my body. I would get skin nodules. I would get rashes. I would get the swollen joints. I would get, you name it. I had all sorts of weird things that manifested with my autoimmune disorders. Um, so I start learning energy and I'm really starting to quickly connect the dots of what it means to be an empath, how I've absorbed energies over the years, especially as a nurse, how I've suppressed my own energies. So, really, like all my own emotional trauma things were like buried, 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 buried. And on top of it was everybody else's emotional trauma shit that I allowed myself to absorb as a nurse, as a wife, as a daughter, as a friend, as a sister, as an in law, as every role that I play on this earth plane. I sucked in everybody's shit on top of my own, right? And I'm saying it not because I blame I absorbed it. I allowed all of that into my energy space because I didn't understand energy. I didn't, not to the degree I understand it now at all. Um, so I started taking the classes and it was, like I said, I started the classes in June and I met Sam, my beautiful business partner, in September of that same year. So she and I were both taking classes at the Zen Loft. And she was in like advanced classes and I was in Debbie's beginner classes. So we never saw each other until there was a meditation that Debbie held for all of her classes in September that I went to. And that's how Sam and I met. But in those couple of months before I even met Sam and I was working with Debbie, um, I started to like do kind of shadow work, but I didn't realize that's what I was doing. Really, what I was doing is I was just starting to question me and also life. So this is where my spiritual awakening really, uh, really started to ramp up. Because I feel like I was learning the internal matrix and the external matrix simultaneously, right? I was starting to become aware of all of this like ancient knowledge that has been suppressed from the books and from our education system for eons because it's empowering information for all of us. It's basically saying that we're all these amazing, powerful light beings inside of this skin suit that have these amazing capabilities of like healing and living thousands of years on this earth plane if we wanted to. And we are creators and like all this stuff I was learning. And it was like, what the F? Why didn't we learn any of this in school? And then so then I talk about the external matrix, and I started really, I started joining different just pages on Facebook too. Call them star seed pages, light worker pages of all these other beings that were also waking up to these truths. So I was starting to learn a lot very quickly, very, very quickly. And it was very overwhelming for me because it was everything that, it was basically unlearning everything I had been taught up to that point about myself and about life and about this earth plane. And it was a shitload. So it's what a lot of people refer to as the dark night of the soul. And I think I bring this up too because I had a client recently that's been listening to different things about dark night of the soul. And she was having fear come up around it, right? Which is very, very normal because it sounds scary. And depending on who you're listening to, who's delivering it, what the perspective is, what the energy behind the message is being delivered, right? Dark night of the soul sounds scary AF. And what I've realized is that dark night of the soul has happened to me multiple times now since my big awakening. Because it's really just becoming more aware of this darkness. It's bringing it to light. So my very first dark night of the soul, I would say, started happening in 2019, and I had no idea how to deal with it. I had nobody to talk to because this was before I met Sam. I was learning things about this earth plane that made no sense, but made sense. Um, and I had people in my life that were still living in the matrix. So, like, I didn't know how to talk about what I was learning about the outside matrix. But also, I feel very grateful because I was learning the inner process at the same time. So, like, some people wake up to all that corruption and darkness in the outside first and either never wake up to their light or it comes later. So I almost feel like it's harder to see the connection where for me my soul was rocking it. She was like, oh no, you're waking up to both at the same time. You're going to see it for the mirror that it is. And it is. I use that external matrix as my mirror for what's going on internally in me. And when I'm talking about the external matrix, I'm literally talking about the social programming that we've all been under, the brainwashing, the mind control, the manipulation that all of the systems that we depend on have kept us under. That is the matrix, right? That to me is the matrix. It's the illusion of a reality on this earth plane and the illusion of separation. It's the duality, the polarity on the earth plane, the yin yang, right? That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the external matrix. It's these systems that are in control that have controlled us and kept us very, very disempowered and have kept us sick, right? And that's why when I was starting to learn this energy stuff at the same time, and I'm like, wait, I can heal myself. Wait, I don't need medicine. Wait. You're basically teaching me everything opposite of what I've kind of done as a nurse to some degree. So it can be very disheartening when you start waking up, because disheartening to the ego, right? It's just the ego that has a really hard time. Our soul knows all of this before we even jump in the chute. Our soul knows exactly what we came into. It knows we came into this illusionary matrix, yada, yada, yada. Like the soul knows all of that. It's the human that forgot. So it's the human ego that forgot. So when the human ego starts to remember, it fights it hardcore, because now it's like I don't want to face the fact that as a nurse, I've probably created more sickness and illness in people than helped them, right? That's the reality of it. It's not me being judgmental. I don't have guilt anymore about it. Hey, maybe I do. Maybe there's another layer down there because I've worked through a lot of it. But I mean, I know my intention of going into nursing was not to perpetuate a system that keeps us sick. Like, had I known that the system was what it was, I wouldn't have gone into nursing. But I didn't know that at the time. So I understand it was part of my path, and I'm grateful for it, because having the nursing background and also being able to do this energy work, it's it's double empowering, because I do understand from a nursing perspective how the body works and how people think the body works and all of that, right? So that's huge. And I understand um the organs. I understand like science behind the body, right? But now with my energy knowledge, I'm able to expand on what we were taught, because we were just taught very limiting things in healthcare. We're taught limiting things in everything, right? So this is what I'm talking about. The external matrix is all of the systems that control us or that we feel that we need. So you've got the education system that just indoctrinates the shit out of all of us, teaches us all of the non ancient teachings, teaches us all of the very disempowering, limiting beliefs that we then think are the only truth that exists, right? So you've got the education system, you've got the financial system, which is a complete joke in itself. Um, and I won't get into you can, anybody that watches this can go look up all about the corruption and the illusion of these systems, because it's in everything. That's what I mean about the external matrix. It's in everything external to us. This very disempowered vibration. It's a vibration. That's what the matrix is. It's a vibration. So we talk about the 3D matrix. It's a low vibration reality. It's not to say that it's real or not. It's real. Everything's real. Here's where shit gets wild when you start to understand energy. Everything is a reality because our thoughts create our reality. Every perspective is a reality. My reality is no less real than your reality, right? Because it's my reality. It's real. It's real to me. So it's real in my Akashic record. It's real in the Akashic field. Your reality is real to you. So it's fucking real. This is where shit gets really wild. Um, so with the external matrix, we've got the education, the financial system, the healthcare. We've got the food industry. Dear God, that's been the most enlightening thing that I've been on lately in my journey. Um, so we've got the food industry, everything out there, the entertainment industry, Hollywood, all of your pedophiles in Hollywood. Um, so, all the people all the celebrities that we love, all of the darkness that lives in Hollywood. Feel free to look that up because I won't get into all of that. But when I say this low vibration is in everything in the external matrix, it is. It's controlling all of it. And it's all fear-based, right? When I'm talking about energy and vibrations and I'm talking about the matrix, I'm talking about fear. That's what I'm talking about. It's a fear consciousness that's controlling that aspect of reality. And people that are unconsciously in fear will continue to perpetuate and feed that reality. They'll get stuck in it, they'll play in it, and that's totally their choice, right? That's either on a free will level and they're aware that they're playing in it, or it's still in an unconscious, I don't know that I'm playing in it type of thing. Either way, it still is their choice. Um, so that's when I'm talking about the 3D matrix, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about these the elite that control us, the cabal, the reptilians, the whatever named the satanic worshipers, whatever you want to call all of them. They're just beings that are fear consciousness, that enjoy living in fear consciousness and enjoy perpetuating fear consciousness. So it's real. It's in everything. And it's a tough pill for most of us to swallow because all of us have identified with our career in some way, shape, or form. We believe that that is who we are, is our career. And unfortunately, our career is part of the system that wants to control and manipulate us. So, whether your career is in healthcare, whether it is in finance, whether it is in the food industry, whether it is in government, because it is the government that's running the show. And it ain't just our government. It's we'll say the global government that's in cahoots to play all of their little countries as minions against each other when they're all kicking back, drinking blood together. So, yeah, that's the external matrix, and it's a really hard thing to wake up to. But when you're also waking up to your light inside at the same time, I believe that it is so empowering and it helps you to make sense of why all that darkness and corruption lives out there and why we've been asleep to it. And um, how it relates to all of the internal corruption and darkness that we've been asleep to. So, this is where I talk about mirrors and using the external matrix as my tool because I don't blame it. At one point in my journey, I blamed it, right? I blamed the cabal. I blamed all of these people that want to control us, that are evil, that are this, that are that. But Spirit has really helped me to step out of that because I've been zoomed out so many freaking times at this point that I don't look at it as like, oh, it's the Matrix's fault, right? Like, because what does that do? That disempowers me. That disempowers me. If I'm aware of my light, then ain't nobody's fault for anything going on in my life. Like, if I'm aware that I have that light inside of me, and when I'm talking about that light, I'm talking about God consciousness, source energy, the creator, right? It's inside of me, it's inside of you, it's inside of every living being on this planet. It can't not be because source created all of us. We are source and we are walking our individual journeys. We are unique expressions of source energy, but we believe we're just the body. We believe that this reality is the end all be all, dear God. And it is so not. That we are just indoctrinated and infiltrated with limiting belief after limiting belief after limiting belief. And that's the 3D matrix. The whole 3D matrix is a limiting belief. Everything within the matrix that tells you you can't do something is a limiting belief, and it's part of the reality of that matrix. So you hear people maybe talk about like moving to 5D, like moving to another dimension, right? All dimensions are states of awareness, states of consciousness. They all exist everywhere. They don't not, so like 4D, 5D, 6D, 7D, all the Ds also exist on this 3D earth plane. But as humans, if we're not aware of those other dimensions, if we're not tapped into them, then they're not part of our reality. The only reality we'll see is the reality we'll see. That's literally whatever your state of awareness or consciousness is at, is what you're going to see outside of you all the time. So, for those of us that do this tapping into other realms, into other dimensions, like I know for me, I can say that it is happening in my daily life too. Like even without trying to tap in, I will see other dimensions within this dimension because I know that they exist here. It's a knowing inside of me that I know that they're here, that it's an illusion to think that it's separate from us. It's an illusion to think that I can't get there. That's all part of the 3D matrix. It's all an illusion. But until you can really start breaking this programmed mind, which, let me tell you, our subconscious mind is so programmed. Um, it's hard to actually believe in those things. And it's like you've heard probably that saying where seeing is not believing, believing is seeing. And that is so true in this work for myself, at least, that my belief is what allows me to see it. It's not that I have to see it first and then I believe it, right? That's 3D matrix. It's trusting and knowing and feeling energies of things that I can't maybe see with my human eyes. Then next thing I know, I see it with my human eyes because I have believed in it so much that it has become a reality. That's why I say every reality is true. I'm starting to realize that truth is so fluid, because we all have our own perspectives, our own perceptions of life, our own experiences. And because I do so much work in the Akashic field and I've done so many different readings for people, it's like everything that was ever a thought, an emotion, or an experience exists in the Akashic field or the quantum field. And so it's real. So it's like we all argue about like things, and it's funny because I catch myself still sometimes, and it's like it's all real. It's all real. Like if that's what I want to believe, then that's real. If that's what you want to believe, then it is real. It's not real. That again is that linear thinking down here in the 3D mindset that like this is the ultimate truth, right? The ultimate truth about the ultimate truth is that truth exists everywhere. It's everywhere. It's in everything. And it's just expanding your awareness to different truths, different realities. So, I've probably wicked digressed from my awakening, but not really, because I'm really just explaining how I went through this. And in taking those classes, learning energy, learning how to tap into spirit, getting messages from spirit outside of this thinking mind, and then learning things through the thinking mind by doing research because I'm learning about all of these different ET races and just all like everything that we were taught in school. I'm learning a complete opposite version of it. And it was like when I'm able to tap into spirit, that's when I can use discernment and take what I need to take from all of these external sources. What is their truth? What are they saying is so true? What can I get from it? What can I learn from it? Now I take that information and I go back to self. I go inside. I tap in with my guides, which is me, my higher self, um, and other higher states of consciousness, and go, all right, help me to discern this information. What am I to do with this information? How does it relate to my life? How does it empower me? Is it part of my truth or not? Right? And that's what I work with clients a lot with is discernment, discernment. I'm always discerning energy, discerning the message behind things, discerning. And it's like become just kind of natural to me. Like before I had to practice it a lot. Now it's like I'm always kind of discerning just energies. Um, so with this external matrix and seeing all of the corruption and disgusting stuff that you wake up to, the child trafficking, the pedophilia, the underground bases that our military is very aware of, because again our government, it's all driven by the government, the govt. I should probably stop saying the full words because I'll end up getting censored, which that should tell you something right there. But anywho, yeah, so these very small groups of global elite beings that continue to manipulate us through the news, which is why there's another perfect example of discernment. I didn't know why I felt sick watching the news all those years, but now I do because I saw through it. I saw through what they were doing. They were feeding us fear, fear, fear repeatedly. That's what they do because they know it controls our subconscious mind. When you hear something repeatedly, it just like it sits in here and then it becomes your truth. It becomes true because you've heard it so many times that like it's become part of your being, it's become part of your belief. So when it becomes part of your belief, you create that reality. And I remember when I first started learning that thoughts create our realities, I was like, holy shit, no wonder why the news does what it does, right? Like it was so obvious to me at that point. Like it was like I could make all these like connections so easily. Same thing with like the whole scarcity tactic that they play with, like, we're gonna run out of like all of these natural resources, right? The droughts and everything that the humans create down here, right? Like, because Mother Earth, I've connected with her so many times. She's this amazing consciousness that is abundant and will continue to keep creating. She doesn't run out of water, she doesn't run out of anything. But we've been living under this false illusion that there's only enough to go around, right? And now there's droughts and now there's this, right? But that's all again created by the artificial weather system that the elites have that manipulate our own weather. So again, when I tell you it's in everything, the external matrix, it's in everything. Um, and so and again, you don't have to believe me, but you can do the research and discern. But the biggest thing about waking up to all that darkness out there, it's not to then fall into it, right? Because that happens to a lot of people when they wake up. And that's where I think too, sometimes if you're not waking up to your inner light at the same time, it can be very, very hard. And you can just fall further into the darkness of it because you already maybe perceived the world to be dark, but now you're waking up to like just how dark can get. And it pulls you in. It reels you in. And especially if you're not doing your inner work. And that's what this is all about too, because I talk about it all the time, because I do it all the freaking time, and I'm meeting more people in my soul tribe that it's just so nice to like come across people that are doing the same thing, because I believe that that's the only way we break free from the external matrix is by continuously doing our own inner work and seeing the mirror that that tool is creating for us, right? Um, and then the more you can shift through the darkness, it brings it to light, right? So I don't live in this like false positivity world. Like I am so aware of all the darkness out there. Spirit has made me very aware of it from 2019. I'm not gonna lie. I started seeing shit and I was like, what? But when spirit shows me, it's in a much um, more zoomed out perspective and in a non fear mongering way. When I do research in the external, there's still a lot of fear mongering behind it because the people that are sharing the message are also still in fear because they're waking up to this, like, what the fuck is all this darkness? So you just got to be careful about who you're listening to, who's delivering the message, and again, what's the energy behind the message? Because sometimes it's just perpetuating the darkness that people perceive that they're trying to shift out of. Not always. Like for me, I'm not trying to make you fearful of these things, and you can probably feel that from my energy. Like I'm just making you aware of the shit that I became aware of that was hard to swallow in my spiritual awakening. So I know if it was hard for me to swallow, then it's hard for everybody else that wakes up to it. Um, so again, I'm not saying that one truth out there is the truth, but I do know these things I've shared with you to have validity and truth to it. And the more I can accept that there's truth to it, the easier I can actually shift through it and use these things that are perceived to be bad as tools for my own inner growth, because that's how I've broken free of the matrix, right? Like I still have to go into the matrix, into society. I still have to like file my taxes, even though that is, don't really want to have to do that anymore. But there's aspects of the matrix I still have to play in, and I understand that. Um, but I don't have to play in it in the same vibration. And that to me is breaking free of the matrix. Like you don't break out of here. You don't ship off to another dimension. Some people believe that's what happens. Currently, where I'm at in my beliefs, that's not what I foresee happening, because I can only explain what I've been shown thus far and experienced. And because I understand dimensions not to be other places, but to be that you're aware of it, that's how we shift into new realities. And it's already happening for me. Like, that's why I'm meeting more people that are on this same wavelength, because I have my energy is at a certain vibration, their energy is at a certain vibration. They've probably been at that vibration longer than I have, but now I'm kind of meeting them. So now we're like meeting each other physically in this reality, right? But they've doesn't mean they haven't been there and I haven't been here. So it's crazy how you start to like really understand the dimensions in a way of like it's not a different place, it's just levels of awareness. And so I honestly feel like too that that's why the more work I've done, that's why, spontaneously, it just happens to me walking. And I know it happens to Sam and many other practitioners. You see other dimensions within this dimension. And it's just because we are believing and knowing that it's there. So now our physical eyes can actually see what our soul knows is already in existence. It's right there. It's right here. There's portals and other dimensions literally right here. I mean, our most powerful portals are heart. So I I started to really have a hard time in 2019 because it was like I was learning so much at once that it was very overwhelming, and I felt like I had no one to share it with, because I literally felt like I was going crazy. And I'm saying this because every client I've worked with so far, um, on some level, thinks they're going crazy, and we're not. We're breaking free from the programs that tell us we're crazy if we believe in this kind of stuff, right? So our ego immediately comes in and is like, going crazy, you're losing it. And we're not, you're not. You're courageous to even be questioning the programs, because that's part of the process, is questioning, why do I believe what I believe? Why do I behave in the way that I behave? Why did those external systems tell me to do what they tell me to do? Like when COVID happened, because I had already spiritually had my big spiritual awakening in 2019. When COVID happened, I remember immediately knowing that it was part of a spiritual awakening for a mass collective of people. I knew exactly what was happening, from that higher spiritual perspective. And I was grateful for that, because it helps me to navigate it with much more grace and ease than a lot of other people that still don't see COVID for what it was supposed to be, what it still is. That's why they're ramping it back up again. Let's control us again. Or try to, because again, the powers that be are very aware of the fact that many beings are waking up on this planet. So they're trying to dial up their their agenda, right? They're turning it, they have to keep kicking it up a notch because they know more people are waking up to these truths and breaking free of the system, leaving their jobs, right? So they're also in fear. That's why they do what they do. When people control, it's because they're in fear. That's what I'm talking about when I say fear consciousness. It is fear that causes us to control. So when you see controlling things happening, it's because it's coming from a fear consciousness. When you are trying to control something, it's because you have a fear about something, and it's usually about the unknown. Most of us don't like the unknown, when in the irony of it is that it's all really unknown, and we're all living in the unknown all the time, because that is the quantum field, that's the void. But in the unknown is where you can create anything and everything. So we've been taught to fear it, but yet it's the most powerful place to be. Um, and we're all pretty much in the unknown all the time. The ego will convince you that it knows, but none of us truly know. We wouldn't be down here learning if we knew all of it, right? What would be the point? So the whole, I'm sort of like trying to remember, bring it back home, what I was just talking about. Bring me back, Spirit. Bring me back into this conversation where I just left off. Help me out here. So yeah, I know I'm talking about fear consciousness. Um, so for me, like, okay, breaking out of the matrix, that's what. So you hear a lot of people talking about breaking free from the matrix, and to me, it means breaking free of my internal programming, my traumas, my insecurities, my fears. That's how I break free from the matrix, because then I'm no longer unconsciously playing in their game. I can go play in their game, but I now am an aware human. I am much more aware of my energies and their energies, and whose energies do I want to invite in today and whose do I not, right? It's all about choices. But when you start to wake up to your light and realize that you're this empowered being, your choices are much more empowered. You actually make conscious decisions instead of robotically making the same decisions based on fear, which just creates karma. And that's all karma is. It's reliving the same things over and over because it's just energy. You're putting an energy out and it's coming back to you in some way, shape, or form in a relationship, in an experience, in an accident, in whatever it is, right? In a disease, in something. You're putting that energy out, it's coming back. That is the karma cycle of the universe. It's energy. Everything is energy. So when you start to see that everything's energy and like really understand that, it's very empowering because then you can look at these external things as energy because that's what they are. And instead of good, bad, right, wrong, evil, not evil, like it's energy. And I look at things on a fear energy level or a love energy level. Like to me, those are like the energies that I'm really looking at because then off of those come all these other little sub energies. So like control, shame, greed, guilt, that's all ego and it's all fear. Um, Forgiveness, empowerment, passion, joy, that all comes from love. So that's why I use those two energies to help me discern energy when I'm working with energy and when I'm just going through my day to day, which in turn has made me an empowered empath, no longer unconsciously sucking in other people. And it's not to like, now you have to like protect yourself in this fear mongering kind of way, right? It's because I do feel like there's a fine line between fear and awareness. Um, but it's just having the awareness that A, your energy affects everyone and everything around you, and B, everyone else's energy affects you. And it affects you even more when you're unaware of it because you're allowing people's thoughts, their beliefs, their feelings to become your own. So this is what I mean. It's unconsciously controlling you. Just like the news, you're allowing it to unconsciously control you to live in fear. Um, so if you watch things and you're very unaware, then those things are playing a huge role on your subconscious and they are becoming your reality. You're creating them as your reality. Um, I am not afraid of COVID. I'm not afraid of getting it. I did not get the JAB. Um, I've been sick twice since COVID came out. And it was probably the flu. Um, but I'm not afraid of it. And I find that the people that were so in fear of it got it. First of all, they A, got it, contracted it, B, got it really bad because it was the fear of the whole virus that and the fears inside of their body that magnified the virus itself, right? And then the virus itself that was man-made um, had all of its own toxins and fear, intention put into it. Everything's intention, people. And the people that made that virus, obviously the intention was not good. If you're making a virus, there's not good intention behind it. And the intention behind COVID from a 3D perspective was not a good intention. It was a fear based intention. Now, from a higher perspective, from the spiritual perspective, from an energy perspective, it was all part of it. It needed to happen because there's still so many of us very unaware of the internal and external matrices. So it was a gift. And I don't mean to offend anybody that had a really traumatic experience with it because I'm not taking away from the trauma that it caused people, the lost lives. I'm not diminishing any of that, but I'm just telling you from a spiritual perspective, it was a gift from universe, from consciousness, from our collective consciousness to wake more people up, right? And there's going to be continued gifts that are going to keep coming because there's still a lot of us that are still very unaware of what was to kind of be taken from these experiences. So again, the internal and external matrix for me, waking up to them at the same time simultaneously was both overwhelming but also empowering. And I also feel like it fast tracked my journey a little bit because I've really, instead of running and hiding from either darkness, I've been able to connect the dots and link the darkness out there to the darkness inside of me and realize that it's all connected. And so it helps me with forgiveness. And I'm not to say, this is not to say that I am by any means there, because I think I started the whole thing by saying, like, I am not evolved, I am evolving, I am awakening. But what I can recognize that I can honestly say to you right now is that going through all that I've gone through thus far, having this new knowledge, having this new understanding, healing so much of my disease. I've never felt this happy or healthy in my entire life. So we talk about the dark night of the soul and that it can be very scary. It's only scary to the ego because the ego likes comfort. The ego doesn't want to be uncomfortable. The ego doesn't like pain. It doesn't like suffering, which is why the ego does what the ego does. It causes us to suppress a lot of that, and then we create addictions, and we use vices and distractions to numb ourselves out from this human experience, which is what we came down to experience. So when my client recently asked me about, her fear surrounding the dark night of the soul, it made perfect sense to me because I've listened to all different perspectives of it and people sharing it, and I can see how it could induce fear. But what I say to people about it is that it's a gift, right? And just the name of it, Dark Night of the Soul, right? The soul isn't having the hard time. It's the ego. The soul is very aware of all of this. You're actually waking up to your soul. Your soul is actually helping you to see the darkness. That's the irony, is that it's the soul, it's spirit that is allowing us to start to see this darkness externally and internally, but from a perspective of love, not from the perspective of darkness, if that makes sense. It's from this very observatory lens where you can actually start to see it all without feeling all of the pain with it, right? So the dark night of the soul to me is, yes, it's very painful. I refer to it for me as ego deaths. That's what I call it because that's what it feels like to me every time I go through them. That's why I say I've been through several dark nights of the soul. I call them ego deaths, and it's just when some sort of egoic program is coming up for me, a trauma, a limiting belief, an emotion, a memory that I've suppressed, or even a memory that I've replayed 50 gajillion times. It's coming up because it needs to be addressed. It needs to be acknowledged. I need to be aware of it, and I need to allow myself to feel it. That's the biggest thing. Feeling, feeling, feeling. Because as humans, that's actually what we wanted to come down and do. But as humans, most of us have spent our life trying to numb out the feelings. And the soul's like, no, that's not really what you wanted to do, because it's from those emotions that gifts come, and we learn from those emotions. If we just walked around like robotic, emotionless beings, like the powers that be eventually want us to do, that's why they trying to play on our empathy and take our empathy away, desensitize us. Um, that's not living in like a high vibration in a physical existence. It's living in 3D matrix, or maybe even lower than that, because we're already robotic. That's the whole thing of it, is we're already kind of walking around as robots, glued to our glued to our phones, glued to, and hey, I am right there with you people. I'm a millennial. So I grew up around technology. The phone is a vice for me. I'm very aware of that. I'm becoming much more conscious about it, and I'm trying just to now use it. I mean, I don't follow stuff that disempowers me, right? I follow stuff that I learn from and empowers me. So I'm very careful about what I'm allowing into my energetic space because I understand energy now. But I can also notice when I'm doing it just as like to busy myself. And it's like, I just sat here for 10 minutes scrolling through Facebook. Like, why? Just to sit here and read people's like stuff. And again, it's all very uplifting stuff that I'm reading. But I'm trying to just be conscious of when I'm using it more as just a distraction or a vice or even just habit. Like it's almost like you don't even realize you're doing it till you realize you're doing it for 15 minutes, and it's like, well, shit, I could have just done like 12 other things. So it's just becoming, this is what you're just becoming aware. Like, so when I talk about shadow work, just like as I was becoming aware of all the horrific stuff externally, I was also starting to wake up to my own shadow. And then I met beautiful Samantha in September, who had also been introduced to shadow work, like was told by another medium, like you need to do shadow work type of deal. And so when she said that to me, I'm like, what the hell is shadow work? And she's like, wow. And so here we are in 2022. And she and I are still doing shadow work every single day of our life. But I speak for myself when I say this. It has become easier, and I think she would agree. It's become easier in the sense just because of our awareness of it and also the intention behind doing it. We understand why we're doing it. It's painful AF. That's why I'm talking about the ego deaths. Oh, yeah, it hurts. It hurts emotionally, it hurts mentally, and sometimes it hurts physically because if you're releasing stuff that your body held onto, it's painful. Take it from somebody who had every autoimmune disorder in the book. Um, so yeah, it's very uncomfortable, which is why the ego will fight it. So if you're feeling resistance to either going deeper within you or feeling resistance to learning about some of the stuff I've talked about, just understand that that's that conditioned part of your brain. It's the ego that wants to keep you living in the same cycle you've been living in. But I do encourage you to ask yourself, if what you've been doing in your life up to this point has worked for you. Meaning, do you feel healthy, happy, empowered, full of joy, grateful? And I don't mean that you feel this every single day, right? Like we're all humans, it's a roller coaster. But can you look at your life and really be like, wow, in awe of it? Because if not, then you probably want to do the internal and external work. Like, because it's your fear of how uncomfortable it's going to be. But when I tell you that with each like layer we shed, each ego death I have, I am so much more empowered on the other end of it. I'm so much more freer. I'm so much more knowledgeable. I'm so much more inspired, humbled. Like all these words are coming up. And as I'm speaking, I'm getting chills again because this is something I'm very, very passionate about because it's worked for me. And I'm not sitting here and saying that, again, that it's easy. There's nothing about the spiritual path that's easy. It's actually, I think I've said it before, but it's for me like there's a term called spiritual bypassing where people kind of talk about how like you don't really do the inner work part of things and you don't kind of really look at the darkness out there, but you kind of just float through and meditate and you know, you do stuff to like be happy, but like energy doesn't lie. So to me, spiritual bypassing is you're just faking it till you make it kind of deal. You're just staying in the love and light because it's comfortable, but not willing to go deep into your own darkness or see the external darkness for what it is. And I'm not saying that you have to go down every single rabbit hole out there, but just kind of understand the concept that every system that we rely on doesn't have the intention to help us. It doesn't. I'm not saying that all the workers within these fields didn't go into it with the right intention, just like me. I was a nurse. I went into it with the right intention to help people until I woke up and realized what I'm doing is not empowering people. And I know this because I was such a heavy consumer of the healthcare system. So I know what it feels like to be a patient. And that's a perspective that not every nurse has. And when I'm saying a patient, I mean I was shipped to every specialist. I've seen every kind of freaking doctor under the sun. So I was a very heavy consumer of the healthcare system and saw all of the cracks in it from that perspective. And then being a provider in it, oh, good Lord, it was like, wow, this system isn't broken, it's rigged. Like it's not broken, it's rigged. All of them are. None of them are broken. They could be fixed in a heartbeat, but they're rigged to be what they are, to keep us all in a very low vibration, to keep us all in fear, which guess what? Keeps us sick. Because guess what? I was a very sicky kid. Sick, sick, sick. Sick as a kid, sick as a adolescent, had mono, was sick all the time after that, was sick, sick, sick with all my autoimmune. Not really sick anymore. Don't say that I don't get colds every now and then. But guess what? I don't take shit for them. I don't take any medication. I have not put medication into this body for 2.5 years at least. And That's my truth. I'm owning that shit. Meditation is my medication. Um, and I think I went off track a little bit about the spiritual bypassing thing, because with the spiritual bypassing, I've heard many different perspectives of what it is, but the way I see it is that you're just trying to fake it. Like, you're trying to fake that you're happy and you're really not. You're telling yourself you're feeling a certain way, but deep down you have all these demons that you're not willing to look at. So you kind of just want to stay in the positive love and light all the time, but really you're still suffering inside, right? Because energy doesn't lie. And I can feel that from people. Like, I can feel that immediately from people. I can feel that false positivity right off the bat. It's like, it's almost nauseating to me, but I understand why people do it. So to me, the spiritual path is not about spiritual, but like, I'm not about spiritual bypassing. The spiritual path has taught me to be more human than I've ever been. And when I say more human, I mean I am more connected to this human experience than I ever have been by connecting with my spirit. My spirit is now like embodied to the point where I'm no longer allowing myself to numb out. I don't allow myself to distract from the uncomfortable thoughts, the uncomfortable emotions, the uncomfortable conversations, right? I don't I don't run away from that anymore. It's like, all right, this is coming up. It's uncomfortable as shit, but it either has to be said. I either have to feel something. I might have to sit in my healing room for 8 hours and fucking cry and punch shit and not even know why, and journal and make videos and do all this stuff to get it out, because it's all energy and it just wants to flow out. And so instead of like picking up my phone or throwing on Netflix or sparking a joint, or eating something to distract myself. Do I do all of those things still? Yes, I do. But I use them with a different intention. I'm no longer using them as my vices to numb out of this human experience, because that is what's caused the suffering. It's trying to feel, it's trying to pretend like these emotions don't exist. It's trying to pretend like these thoughts don't exist, but they do. They're energy. Once they're created, they're there. So pretending they're not there doesn't make you feel better, right? And this is why, as humans, we are so busy, because we busy ourselves. That's the best way we distract ourselves. We're out busy helping everybody else. That's the other thing. Oh God, empaths. It's going to trigger some people, but be mindful of where you're busying yourself and where you're taking on all of these roles to help everybody else. And then people are coming to me and saying they're exhausted because nobody's helping them, because we're giving our energy to everybody else, because that's actually the easier thing to do, to be honest, than to actually sit with self and give ourselves that energy and love first. That's actually the harder thing to do, as batshit crazy as that even sounds coming out of my mouth. It's the reality of it. Um, it's so much easier to go help someone else, because we're really kind of distracting ourselves with what we're feeling, and in the moment we get this gratification, right? You feel gratified when you help people. Of course we do. Like that, I mean, I'm not saying we're not here to help people, but I'm saying we've used that as a vice and as a crutch, and in turn have created our own suffering inside. And the the desire to help, or the intentional energy that's driving the help, is not actually coming from an authentic place. It's coming either from guilt, or it's coming from, I don't want to feel my own shit. So let me go, I'm going to feel good for today because I'm going to go do something for this person, right? And that's going to make me feel good. And it usually does for that day. But then guess what? We're still left with ourselves after the kindness act that we've done. We're still left with us and the voids that we're feeling inside. So oftentimes we're using this as an escape to go be the helper everywhere else, to go be the fixer, the doer everywhere else, but we're not doing for ourselves first. And that's where it's the most important, because when you do for yourself first, when you help yourself first, holy shit, we help people in ways I would have never dreamed I could help people with my energy. It's just my energy. I don't even have to necessarily do much anymore to be of service. It's my energy that serves people. But my energy ain't going to serve people if I'm giving from it from a place of guilt, a place of shame, a place of, oh, I should be doing this because this is what I should be doing as a good human, right? That's not actually coming from an authentic place. That's coming from a ego-driven, this is what I should be doing, all these limiting beliefs that are driving the behavior. Um, so the dark night of the soul doesn't have to be scary. Just understand that it's you finally starting to acknowledge the darkness. And when I say the darkness, it's really just the things that have been hidden. That's all the darkness is. There's lack of light there, right? But when you really step out of the illusion of the 3D matrix, you realize that the dark and the light are the same thing. But I won't get into that here because that's just going to throw everybody way off. For the sake of the earth plane and the fact that we live in this polarity duality here, there's light and dark. And to me, all the darkness is lack of information. It's lack of knowledge. It's been suppressed. It's been hidden. So whether that's dealing with your own internal shit or all the shit that I brought up that exists out there, that's in every industry, everything we touch out there is part of the external matrix. But it's not, I'm not saying it so now you go blame it, right? I think I said this before. Like I don't blame that for me. I don't blame it for my traumas. My traumas are my traumas. I went through my traumas because this beautiful soul inside of me said I'm going to go jump onto the earth plane into a skin suit and I'm going to learn a whole bunch of shit. And in that, I'm going to have to go through trauma, what the human perceives as trauma, because that's how I learn. That's how I grow. That's how I shift. That's how I evolve. That's how I share with other people that go through the same things, right? So I don't, to me, it's very disempowering blaming something outside of me for me being the way I am. I'm aware that that has played into all the programming 100%, but I don't blame it. I'm aware to it. And because I'm aware, now I'm just more conscious of what I allow into my energy space. I'm more conscious of what I watch, what I listen to, what I read, right? And I don't do it in a fear-based way. I follow my resonance. If I'm watching something and it's like not resonating with me, we'll say, because to me, there's a difference. Like I can be triggered, or I can also just be around something that doesn't resonate. And the feeling inside me is different. If I'm triggered by something I'm watching, I usually will force myself to keep watching it because I know that the trigger is telling me there's something inside of me that needs to be looked at. There's a darkness, an unacknowledged thought, emotion, or experience inside of me that was triggered by something I watched or something someone said that now needs to be addressed. It needs to be acknowledged. It needs to be looked at, felt, whatever, right? So if I'm triggered by something I'm watching, I will tend to make myself keep watching it. If something doesn't resonate, I'm not triggered. I'm just like, I hear what the person is saying. I understand their perspective, but it's like, yeah, it's not my truth. It's their truth. So I'll either disengage from whatever it is that I'm watching. It's like, yeah, this doesn't resonate because it's like I guess I don't feel I'm learning anything from it. Um, because it's like I understand what the perspective is. It's like I understand what the person is saying because I probably at some point in my journey thought or felt the same thing, but it no longer resonates because I'm not there anymore. So it's different for me following when I'm talking about like I shut something off based on it's not resonating with me versus like it's triggering me because it's two very different feelings inside of me. Like something triggers me, I immediately feel it like body gets tense. Usually stomach will get a little bit like queasy. Throat will sometimes get like scratchy or close up. Like it's an immediate internal response that I have when I'm triggered. And I, for the most part, don't react on those triggers because I have a lot of self-awareness. But I'm still a human, and I'm not saying I don't ever react on those triggers. I absolutely do. But it's like I'm almost immediately aware of it when I do it. When something doesn't resonate, it's not that same like clenched feeling. It's just like, oh, I hear what they're saying. Yep. I get where they are or something along those lines. It's like, yeah, that doesn't resonate with me anymore. So I mean, they're not going to watch it anymore or if I'm in a conversation with somebody, I just let them say it. I just don't say anything. It's just like, yep. But in my head, I'm like, yeah, not my truth, but it's their truth. So it's like, it's true. It's reality. I'm not negating that it's not real or it's not true because it's their truth and it is their reality. So to me, I don't know if that helps people with triggers and resonance a little bit, but that's just how I've experienced it is like when I'm triggered, like every aspect of my being knows I'm triggered. Like versus like if I just don't have, sometimes I won't say anything if people talk about stuff that doesn't resonate with me, or a perspective that no longer resonates. And I won't, sometimes I'll just be quiet because it's like I've let them say their piece. And unless they're asking for my perspective, it's like, okay, like rock and roll. Like there's nothing to say because I'm not there to try to like argue or negate anything, anybody's truth. It's like that's the reality. That's their reality. So when I'm triggered, however, my response can be different, and I know that. I can sometimes I immediately will say something quickly, and it's like, oh, that was my ego. That was a trigger. Um, or I can just feel it inside. And sometimes I don't say anything because I'm aware enough like that I'm fucking triggered and I'm not gonna say anything. I'm not gonna say anything right now. But oftentimes I will just be pretty quiet if somebody says something that doesn't resonate. Just because it's like what do you like? Okay. Like there's nothing to really say if somebody's just sharing their perspective about something, right? And unless they're asking for yours, that's how I operate. Unless somebody's asking for mine, I really don't give it because I don't really feel like anybody wants it unless they're asking for it. Now, if somebody's asking for it, they're going to get my full perspective about something. Like I've learned to really not hold back my truth anymore. This is where these videos are helping me too. Like I'm becoming more comfortable that when I'm asked my perspective on something, it's like, all right, I'm going to give it. And because you're asking me for it. If I'm not asked, I very rarely give any sort of guidance or advice because I believe that to be sort of an egoic structure. And I know it is. If I'm giving, let's talk about advice for a second. If I'm giving unsolicited advice, that's all ego driven, right? And people don't want unsolicited advice. They're not going to take unsolicited advice, right? Like nobody's fucking asking for it. So nobody wants it. But giving advice versus just giving your perspective about something is two totally different energies as well. Everything's energy and intention. It's like that's what I'm always reading from people and also myself when I'm speaking. It's like, am I giving advice right now or am I really just sharing my truth? Really, in this video, I'm really just sharing my truth. If you take guidance or advice from it, great. But it's really me just sharing what I've experienced in this shit show of the spiritual awakening that many people are going through as well. And so I just feel like the more of us that share our own personal experience with these things, it just helps empower other people as they go through the different stages of awakenings. Because I do believe that there are stages to some degree that we all go through when we wake up to all of this. Like we're waking up to our internal light, waking up to the external matrix, waking up to our internal darkness, waking up to the external light as well. Like it's like you're waking up to so much shit and it's overwhelming. And at first, you want to be like a town crier and you want everybody to like to know this, right? Because on some level, it's very empowering and you're like, fuck, I want everybody to break free, right? I've got the answers to the test. Break free, everybody. So it's like there's a stage that we all go through in these awakenings where like you just want everybody in your life to now start realizing these truths and seeing it from your way. Um, so this is where I think a lot of communities talk about like spiritual ego, which sounds like an oxymoron, but I just the way I kind of have I don't know, interpreted spiritual ego. Everybody again has their own definition and whatever. But for me it's like the closer I've connected with spirit, the louder my ego gets. Like that to me is what spiritual ego is. It's like, yeah, the more I've actually allowed myself to follow this guidance, listen to this higher self guidance energy, the louder my ego gets because it's like, oh my God, I'm losing control over the human. Like they're starting to listen to this other part of themselves, like, and I'm losing control. And this other part of themselves don't know what they're talking about, right? So it's like the ego comes in and is like gets even louder. So to me, that's spiritual ego, and I've gone through it. I probably still go through it. I've watched multiple people go through it where it's like you have all this like knowledge now, this new knowledge of this spiritual foundation and like just like new knowledge. So like you want to share it with everybody. But then you want everybody to wake the F up, right? We all go through that stage. Like you literally want to shake everybody into an awakening. Um, and I've also learned for me that part of that comes from service to like humanity. Like, yes, there's a part that's like, oh my God, I want everybody to feel empowered like this. Like, I want everybody to break free from their own shit. But then there's also a part of us that we want everybody to wake up because it's like we want to speed this process along, which means we don't want to be in uncomfortability. Like, so it's ego, that's spiritual ego. Like, if the intention of why we just want to shake everybody into an awakening is that because sort of a misery loves company type of thing, or like the quicker everybody does it, we're just like everything's going to be great. No, everything's not going to be great because everybody goes through their awakening process very differently. Like it's a process. It's not like I just woke up one day and now I'm awake. That's why I say I'm awakening. So if everybody believed that they were this eternal being, this light, and had these capabilities, would we live in a completely different plane? Absolutely. But I also know that humanity has chosen to create different realities. So it's not my job for the people that truly want to play in the 3D matrix, and there's many beings that just want to play in that, then it's not my job to go rustle them into something to make my reality better, right? Because that's what it comes down to. Am I trying to make my reality better by waking everybody up? And like a lot of people aren't ready for a lot of this stuff yet. People are in all different aspects of their life, all different traumas, and not everybody is ready to even receive half of this information, whether it's from the external matrix perspective or even like what I was learning in my shamanic workshop that I did. Like a lot of stuff I shared during that time was not welcome by people, because people aren't ready for stuff when they're not ready for stuff, and we all are ready at different points and times in our life. So I just learned from the awakening process that it really wasn't my job to go shake people into awakenings, because it can also send people, depending on the way you go about it, you can send people into like a psychotic break too. Because that's just not understanding that people are at different places and we all carry different traumas and people process information very, very differently. So for me, I'm all about spreading awareness 1,000%. That's why I'm making these videos. That's why I have the business that I have with Sam. That's why I'm walking the path I'm walking. That's spreading awareness. That's walking the talk, right? I'm walking awareness because I am constantly broadening my awareness. So by doing that, anybody that meets me is going to be affected by my expanded awareness, my expanded consciousness. So to me, that's how I believe we wake people up. It's by really owning our own awakening. Because the more we wake up, we start to find all these other people that are doing the same thing. And that's what goes back to like, I've found so many people in my soul tribe just in this last week by branching out, going out, meeting new people, putting myself out there. I did an event yesterday and met more beautiful beings. And it's like, this is what this is all about. Like, I'm not trying to shake people into awakenings that aren't there yet, aren't ready, but I'm here as a beacon of light to share information. And I'm always here for when you are ready. That's what it's all about. Like, I'm here to share what I know. I'm not here as a guru that I know it all because I sure as shit don't. I I literally learn something new. I feel like almost every minute of my existence. Like I'm using everything as a lesson. So do I know everything? Dear God, no. I don't want to know everything. I know enough to know I don't want to know everything, right? So to me, just, I'm sharing all of this because I know many of us are going through different stages of awakening. Just be aware that you will go through a stage where you'll feel very isolated. like I was saying, like before I met Sam, I felt very alone. Even though I had people around me, I felt inside very alone because, like, what the fuck? I was learning again so much all at once and, like, didn't even know how to explain it to people. So then when I met Sam and, like, she taught me a little bit about shadow work, and then I did the Shamanic Apprenticeship after she completed it, that was like life changing for me because that was all shadow work. That's all that apprenticeship was shadow work. But also it was light work too. That's the beauty of it. It's like I can't look at anything on this earth plane now without seeing the yin and the yang. I see the polarity or the duality and everything. But with that, I also see that it's the same thing. That's the beauty of it. Like, by doing this sort of synonymous internal external matrix healing at the same time, I can see how it's all connected, but, like, I can't look at any one thing and say it's all bad or all good. It's like I see the good and the bad in it almost immediately. But because I've done so much shadow work, the amount of bad that I see right off the bat is less than what I perceive to be good because I'm seeing the light in shit now. Like, in people, like that whole namaste phrase, right? Like, so many of us say that, the light in me honors the light in you, but, like, do you understand, like, what that really means? Like, the light inside of me loves the light that's inside of you, but it also loves the darkness because the darkness inside of me just wants love, right? It just wants love and acceptance. That's all it wants. And then it becomes light. That's what transmutes the dark. That's how you transmute that darkness, is meeting it with your light. Just like the external stuff, we can't ignore it to shift out of it. You can ignore it all you want, but you'll never shift out of that energy of it, if you ignore what it is. But it also doesn't mean once you're aware of it that now you are glued to it and perpetuating it, because then you're just as unconscious as the people that don't even know what it is. You're still very unconsciously playing in it. And that happens to a lot of people that won't do inner work or aren't ready to do their inner work. They get so stuck on all of the external, I'll call them conspiracy theories because that's what you'll hear them referred to, but they're really not. They're just realities that are real, and true. But a lot of people can get very focused and stuck on them and never make the connection with themselves. And that's really, to me, the whole point of it. Because we are the external matrix until we're not. So when I met Sam, that was like I finally had somebody that I could talk to on both the we're learning energy and spirit, and we're also learning all about the cabal and the elites and the pedophilia. And then when COVID happened that next year, the jab, like all of that, right? But it was just such a gift to have her because we're both tapped into spirit. So whenever like either she or I would come across something in the external that was either shared with us, sent to us, we came across it. It's like she and I are always tapping into the guides for that discernment. Give us the higher perspective, give us that observatory lens so I can really, like, take this information in through my heart, not allow it to pull me into the darkness of it, but let me really, like, pull it into my heart space and see it all for what it is from a higher perspective. And that's what she and I do. And we still do it. Like, and oh my Lord, look at that. Freezing cold, but I'm not really cold. Spirit going, bingo. So yeah, that is my spiritual awakening in a nutshell. My body broke, started taking energy classes, started really listening to that intuitive voice that I've had my entire life, that I am very aware when I shut it off. And it's wide open now. I can't not hear it now. And it's beautiful because the more work we allow ourselves to do in the darkness, it's all about going deep into the darkness, my friends. The brighter we shine, because we have convinced ourselves that by ignoring the darkness, whether it's outside or inside, that we're better, right? Or like we're higher vibe or whatever. We've literally convinced ourselves that by ignoring it, we're not feeding it, when in the reality of it, we're feeding it even more because we're very unconscious to how it's all supposed to be teaching us. And if we're not getting the lesson from it, karmically, we are continuing to create that cycle. We're continuing to create that reality for ourselves and for a big part of the collective. I won't say the entire collective because much of our collective is very um, aware and continuing their awakening path. So those that are doing this work like every day for themselves are are shifting timelines, shifting realities for themselves and for a lot of people. But until you're doing that work for yourself, you won't see those realities. You won't be part of that because you are not, nobody can shift your own reality for you. Nobody can do this work for you. People can enlighten you with knowledge and information from the external or even what I'm learning from spirit, but I can't I can't I can't wake somebody up. I can't get people to believe in themselves unless they're ready to believe in themselves. I can inspire people, I can motivate people, but I cannot do the work for you. Nobody can do the work for you. You have to choose to do this work. And it takes a courageous heart and a strong person to really step into doing this work. But I promise you that it is the most empowering, the most healing, the most fulfilling work that you'll ever do your entire life. And you will see how it just exudes out to everybody else the more you work on yourself. You can't not affect people with your energy. We're always affecting people with our energy. So when you're really coming from this authentic light, can you imagine how you can affect people? Holy shit. It's like it's insane. And this is why the powers that be have manipulated our entire education system. So we don't know this. We don't have all the ancient knowledge, the teachings from the Egyptians. And, we're not taught it the way that would actually empower us. We're taught it in a way that indoctrinates us and keeps us in fear and keeps us enslaved and controlled in the systems that want to continue that reality on this earth plane. Like that's the game they want to play. And this is a land of free will. So anybody can play that game that wants to play that game. I personally don't want to play the game of fear anymore. And when I say that, that doesn't mean that I believe that I'm going to get rid of all my fears. It's not about that, but it's about each time if I'm faced with a fear, I'm willing to face it, right? It doesn't mean that I believe that I'm going to live this whole life fearlessly. I don't, I believe that fear has a lot to teach us personally. I've learned a lot from fear. It is a very potent teacher, but it can be a prisoner if you're unaware of it. Wow, that's like brilliant. So fear can be one of our most potent teachers when we're aware, but it can also be a prisoner for us if we're asleep because we're not using it for the very potent tool that it is. Like that's why we came to the earth plane. So I don't believe for me personally that I'm going to rid myself of all of my fears in this life or rid myself of fear consciousness. But I think it's more about being aware of when fear comes up and allowing it to not take control over me. Now I get to work with it in a way that it's like, all right, fear, what are you teaching me? What are you trying to show me? What are you telling me? What do I need to feel? What do I need to release? Like, and then you transmute it. You meet it with love and it transmutes. But it doesn't mean personally to me that it doesn't ever resurface again, right? Like I think that fear is actually a very crucial teacher on this earth plane. That if we actually started to see it from that perspective, we'd shift out of it. That's the wild piece of it. It's a wild piece of all this work. It's like it's our perspectives of things that actually shape the reality of reality. So my beautiful beings, this was probably a super long video, which I had a feeling it would be, but it is all about, my awakening to this point. So it's been a few years since I started really waking up and really doing this conscious work. I think I was waking up for a while. Like I said, doing the ghost hunting was part of my awakening. But it's like I haven't been doing this conscious inner work since, I started it in 2019. So I've only really been doing it for a few years. So kudos to the people, rock stars that have been doing this shit for a long time. You are warriors of the light. Um, and you inspire me to keep doing this work because I kid you not when I tell you I am the healthiest and happiest I've ever been in my entire life. And you know why? It's because I'm finally starting to feel authentic. I'm finally starting to know who I am. I don't fully know who I am yet. I'm still learning, but I'm learning what I'm not. That's what, more importantly, is I'm learning what I'm not. And those programs in my mind is not who I am. I am not those emotions. I'm not those experiences. I am not those roles. I am not those careers, right? Um, I think, the whole nursing thing for me, there's definitely an ego piece, 100%. Like, as far as like, there's a part of us I feel like we like that we help people. We like that nurses are a respected profession. Like, why wouldn't we like that? It's the ego that likes it. And then you kind of get attached to it, and then you self-identify as that's who you are. And it's not just nurses. I'm using that as an example because that's my story. It's every career path that people have really vested their time and energy into, and they believe that that's who they are. These are just roles, people. These are roles that we're playing, and they can either be roles that imprison us or they can empower us when we start to actually see the role for what it is. And I believe that that's what nursing has done for me. I went through a lot of like grief and guilt and shame when I started waking up about being a nurse. But I knew I had to go through all of those layers to realize, like, my rooted intention of going into nursing was compassion, right? It was to help other people. But I didn't realize I kind of had no business helping other people when I wasn't helping myself at all. What am I really doing for people if I am not helping myself at all, right? I do find nurses to be a pretty hypocritical profession to some degree. Sorry, guys, but we're all about health and wellness on paper and telling our clients what they need to do, but we're ripping butts in the parking lot and we're knocking back the alcoholic drinks after work, and we're ordering fast food. So like, I mean, again, I worked in the profession, so I can say this, pretty hypocritical if you ask me. Which again was one of the things that I had to work through and go through and realize like I was a hypocrite too. Like we all are. we're all hypocrites. We're all walking contradictions, but that's okay. It's about having compassion for yourself. That's part of the program. We all are. But it's like it's becoming aware of it and when do you want to like step out of that reality, right? And for me, like I had to leave my job last year. I had to. I could not. And it's not even like I loved who I worked for. My last job, the company I worked for, was the best company I've ever worked for in my entire nursing career. So on that regard, like it was very hard to, and I also worked with a great team of nurses that for the first time, it was like, wow, we all work together and like nobody's like, I mean, you always have a little cattiness when you're dealing with women and nursing and all that, but it's like it was the first job that I actually found that camaraderie amongst all the nurses, amongst the institution I worked for. And so on that level, it was hard to leave my job. I mean, those were the things that I was going to miss, but those were the only things I was going to miss. Um, just being part of the whole paradigm of the healthcare. I actually call it health scare system because that's really what it feels like to me. Everything within it feels like scare, fear, right down to how when you're diagnosed with things, it's fear, or when you get a prognosis, or when you are told a lab value, and it's so everything is so limiting. It's so limiting, and it is so fear mongering. that I was like, I personally can't be part of this anymore. I've been on both sides of the fence of the health scare system, and none of it feels empowering anymore to me, so I'm out. It's time to create a new healthcare. And so by really stepping out and doing this business and now even branching out even more, there are so many people out there that are feeling the same way and are working to create a new healthcare system, which is focused on health and wellness. And it's focused on disease prevention, not let's uh let's now manage these 55 diseases I've created over the last 14 years of my life, right? It's about let's not create disease to begin with. How about let's start there? So yeah, that's my awakening in a nutshell, I guess. Just trying to think if there's anything major I've left out, but really, I do feel very grateful. I feel grateful for so many things, but I feel especially grateful that my awakening um, it was like yin yang right from the start, meaning it was light, dark, but inner, outer all at the same time. And as overwhelming as it was, it helped me to just connect dots so much easier. And also, um, there was less fight from my ego in it, because it's like I saw why everything out there was the way it was. And then I began to understand why everything in here was the way it was. And it was like, whoa, how did I not see this before? But you don't see shit till you see shit. Then you can't unsee shit. Let's put it that way. And that is the best way that I can sum up my awakening. You don't see anything until you see it, but then you can't unsee it. You can't unknow stuff, right? You can build on that knowing. And that's what happens to me every single day. Every time I either do a reading for somebody, every time I meet somebody new, every time somebody does a reading for me, every time I watch something that's inspiring and empowering and uplifting, it's like I am building on the knowing, right? Which is why every day it's like, fuck, I don't know anything because like I thought I had it figured out. And then that's when the ego comes strolling in and is like, oh, come on. You know better than that. You know, you never have it all figured out. That's that's the curiosity and the gift of life is like if we had it all figured out, what would be the point? What would be the point of living, honestly? That's what I'm saying to myself right now. If I had it all figured out, why would I like what would be the point? There wouldn't be a point. Like, so yeah. Um, that's my awakenings, because I'm still awakening. I'm still waking up. I will continue to wake up probably until the day I exit this skin suit. And even then, I know I'll still be waking up on the other side because that's how this all works. And it's actually a beautiful gift. But it is a journey, and it's important that people understand that this is a process. It's a journey. It is so non-linear, and you're going to want it to be linear. You're going to want this to be linear because the Matrix 3D mindset is a linear mindset. So you're going to want your journey to be linear. You're going to want to know there's a finish line. You're going to want to think that once that issue is healed, that paradigm is never going to come up for you again. Like your ego will want this to be linear, but just remind yourself it's not. That evolution is what it is. It's the shifting of energies. It's the light and the dark melding together, right? So it's like you're experiencing both of it, all of it at the same time without actually being any of it. You're none of it, but you're experiencing it all at the same time. So, my beautiful, beautiful beings, thank you for hanging tight. For anyone that actually listens to this entire video, I appreciate you. I appreciate anybody that just listens to a few minutes. This was great for me to get this out, to share my story of my awakening from sort of start to where I am right now. Because I think it's so important that as more of us start to wake up to the light and dark inside of us, that we share it with people so people don't feel so alone. Because you're all going to feel alone in this, no matter how much of a support system you have, no matter how many physical people you have around you. Everybody goes through this loneliness, but it's part of it. You have to feel lonely in this to realize your power. right? And that's what I've recognized too. Like I have to go through those phases of feeling alone, because that's what pushes me to step into my power. And I can't do that if I'm dependent on people all the time, or I'm always wanting everybody to see it my way, or that I have to have all these people in my realm that think like this, right? Because as you go through this process, you'll all go through that stage too. This is why I say there's so many stages of it, but you'll flip flop. You'll go back and forth. That's why I say it's not linear. You don't just go through that stage and never go back to that stage. I still go through the stage of wanting to rattle people sometimes. And it's usually because on some way their unawareness is affecting me. So it's like that's when like I want to like shake people. So that's ego driven. That I know is ego driven, because if I'm allowing their unawareness to affect me in some way, shape, or form, that's on me. That's not on them. I don't have to shake them into like that. That's ego driven. So just be mindful as you go through your stages that A, they're not linear. B, they're normal. You are normal. You are not fucking crazy. Um, and just have patience with yourself and reach out to people for support, because there are many of us that know what this feels like from our own perspective, right? So it is nice to have people to bounce stuff off of, but don't become dependent on that, because it is in those feelings of loneliness that you will really find your power. And we're all very, very powerful beings. And I hope those of us that want to wake up to that in this lifetime will, because I don't believe that everybody is on that path in this life, and that's okay, because we're all here to experience our own individual journey. That's what it's all about. And if we cared less about, and when I say care, I actually mean caring from an ego perspective. If we didn't give a fuck what other people were doing, we would all like actually be happier just right off the bat. If none of us cared how other people were living their life, that alone would empower us individually, because where everybody is always so focused on what other people are doing, thinking, saying, wearing, eating, blah, 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 right? And it's like that's taking you out of you. It's shifting your attention, your focus, your energy on something outside of you that you cannot control. It's disempowering to you. So the more we're focused on other people's journey, it doesn't mean we can't help people on their journey. That to me, I've helped people by holding space. That's what it's all about. I hold space no matter where they are on their journey, no matter where I perceive their awakenedness to be. I hold space for them to fucking talk, because that's the biggest thing. Communication in this earth plane is so lacking. We've never had more communication devices, phone, freaking Zoom, you name it. But yet our actual human communication sucks. You know why? Because we don't know how to talk to ourselves. We don't even know how to communicate honestly and authentically to ourselves. So how can we do it with other people? We can't. This is why I say the inner work is so important, because everything that you do to other people is a mirror of how you've treated yourself or communicated with yourself, right? It's what we project onto everyone else is how you've treated yourself too. So this is why I say the inner work personally I feel is so important, because how can I be good to other humans if I'm not good to this human first, right? I can't be. It's fake. It's fake if I'm being good. I have faked it for many years. I know what it feels like. It feels like a very different energy. It feels like forced. I'm doing something out of the kindness of my heart, because really there's a program in there that's telling me I'm supposed to be doing that for the sick person, for whatever, for the vulnerable part, for whatever it is, there's a program in there that is saying I should be doing this right now. But instead, I'm putting myself aside and what actually myself needs to feel to rejuvenate my own energy. I'm going to push that all to the side, because I'm going to be the good person here. I'm going to be the bigger person, and I'm going to be the doer for everybody. But I've put myself on the back burner. Well, guess what? The energy is felt by the people that you're doing for. I can wholeheartedly tell you that much. When people do something for me out of what I feel is genuine compassion, it feels very different than when people do something for me out of obligation. It is a completely different energy that's driving the behavior. And it makes me feel very different in receiving what's being done. So just be mindful too of the intentional energies that are driving your behaviors, your decisions, your choices, and realize that we're all programmed to distract ourselves by going out and fixing everybody else. But it feels very disempowering because what we do realize in the spiritual journey is that we have no power over anybody else. We cannot fix, heal, save, whatever word you want to use, any of those, we cannot do that for other people. That is so disempowering for ourselves and then for the person that we perceive needs our help so tremendously, right? It's one of the most disempowering programs that we're all carrying around, is that we're here to save everybody else and fix everybody else. We can't. And you will start to see in your spiritual path, the more that do this work, you'll start to see that's because you will feel exhausted. It goes back to like when I was saying, like shaking people into awakenings. Like you will feel exhausted because you have spent so much time and energy and focus on shaking people that aren't ready. They're not even on a energetic wavelength to hear the message that you're trying to give, right? Like they're literally like there is I can't think of the word right. It's cognitive dissonance. Thank you. Thank you. I said, thank you, spirit. Thank you, like I'm talking to somebody else. Well, I am. Um, but cognitive dissonance is a legit thing. Like it, people are where they're at. Let's just put it that way. So when we are trying to drive something into somebody or like beat it into them, it's like you feel exhausted afterwards. You feel like, and then that's when you fall into the nobody hears me, nobody listens to me, nobody understands me. You start to fall into your own self-victimized like mindset. And that's why I say it's a very disempowering to believe that any of us is here to save everybody else. I believe we're here to save, heal, empower ourselves. And by doing that, it has an energetic it's like energetically contagious to the other people that are here to do the same thing in this lifetime on this timeline. So then that's where then we get to help each other. We share with each other. I still give guidance all the time because I have clients that come to me for guidance. So again, it's not unsolicited advice, it's guidance being asked of me, and I give it. So that is why I say the more real you are in your own journey, the more you actually will be able to help people. Because then when people ask for your guidance, you can be just as authentic as I've been in this video about my journey and sharing what I've learned. And that is what helps people. That and then holding the space. Holding the space for people is one of the most important things we can do to help others. And when I say holding space, that means you literally have your mouth zipped and you allow people to talk for as long as they need to talk without interjecting. And guess what? Here's the other big thing. It's without being up here. It's actually listening to them. It's not half listening, but in your head thinking about, all right, well, what do I think about this? How do I want to respond? What should I say? Like, because guess what? You're not actively listening. You're in your thinking mind, you're in your ego, and you're preparing what now you want to say in rebuttal or in not even always rebuttal, but in response to the person, right? That's not holding space. Holding space is literally sitting there, actively listening, but you're so present in what they're saying. Like it's almost like you have to go into like a little bit of a meditative like grounding before you can really hold space for somebody, I believe, because it's hard to actively listen. It's very hard because our minds are chattering, especially when somebody else is engaged in a conversation with us. It gets our thinking mind thinking, right? So then it starts chattering in our head. Well, we can't be listening to that and fully be listening to what the person is saying, right? And I'm learning active listening every time I do a session. I learn it better and better and better. I'm constantly improving my listening skills because as a nurse, I believed I was a good listener and I think I was to a degree. But now that I understand active listening on a totally different level, it's like, holy shit. And nope, I wasn't. I was preoccupied. I was thinking about my next patient because again, we're task oriented in our careers, especially like that. We're overworked. We've got too many patients. We've got too many things all at once. And so like we're never really present, fully present because we're already thinking about the next 50 things we have to do. And it's the same thing when we have conversations with people. Are you fully present? Or are you thinking about what you have to do tomorrow? Are you thinking about what happened today to you? Are you still living in like you're pissed off because something happened in the morning or whatever? Like these are all the things that as humans, if you're not aware of, then you're not really holding space for somebody. Holding space literally just means you're allowing them to express. And then guess what? You're not giving advice at the end, not unless they're asking you. You're literally just listening. And that's the biggest thing that I have found to be so empowering for my clients, but also when space is held for me. And Sam has been somebody that has been able to do that like to a T from the time I met her. So I don't even know if you know this, Sam, but you have always, and my mom is the other person I would say that has always been, I don't even know if she knows that's what she's doing, but she's like a rock star space holder. Like she doesn't interject. I can feel that she's listening to me, right? Because you can feel when people are listening, or you know when they're in their thinking head. Again, this is feeling energy. Like that's all I do all the time now. Like I can feel where people are at when I'm speaking, when I'm not speaking. Like I can just feel it. I can discern it. I can see it. So like my mom has always been somebody that always listened and doesn't interject. And then at the end of whatever it is that I've said, doesn't either try to talk me out of how I'm feeling or um, tell me I'm not really feeling that way or give me advice to like fix myself. Like that's not holding space. That's again, that's giving unsolicited advice kind of. It's different, again, if somebody's asking you for your perspective or your guidance, totally different. But oftentimes people just want to be heard. People just need to express because all of us have throat chakra issues on many levels. So when people feel like there's a safe space that they can just express themselves and without judgment, without like, oh, this person's going to tell me, well, now I should be doing this instead, blah, 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 right? Like those are all the things that like, that doesn't feel like a safe container for you to express. And I have to say, like, again, Sam, like, I don't think you even realize, but it's like, I feel like this week Spirit has shown me some memories of like when we first became friends and just like the couple times that it's kind of funny to say that, but the couple times that we hung out in person together while I was still living there. But it's like every flashed memory is well, me falling apart usually. But you literally, like, you felt like the same energy as my mom. Like, that's the best way I can describe it. Is like you literally just sat there. Even when I even remember being at your house one time, bawling my eyes out. And instead of you, like, I remember you, like, stood behind me, but you didn't even try to, like, console me to the point where it was like you were trying to get me to stop, if that makes sense. But you just came and, like, made your presence known. But you were even like, just cry, just let it out. And like you didn't interject. And then at the end, it wasn't like you had to give me all this advice on, like it was just, it was beautiful. And I'm just sharing that right now because I think it's important for people to understand what it means to hold space and when space is held for you. And that it really empowers people to start to be able to be them. And that's what this, I feel like this journey is all about. It's stripping away all these programs that aren't us to remember who we are. So, super long video. Thought I was going to end it a few minutes ago, but here we still are. So, on that note, beautiful beings, love you so much. Thank you so much. And as always, if anybody ever watches these videos and has like questions, you can feel free to, you can find our website, email me, whatever, reach out because you're not alone in this journey. So many of us have really signed up to walk this courageous spiritual path while in the human form. And we're rock stars for doing it. So I love you. Thank you. And keep on being you.